Visitors to our museum. Anybody? Well, wonderful. Welcome. This is what we do once a month for our little fundraising for our nonprofit over here, and we're pretty excited about that. We are a nonprofit, and we do thank some of our sponsors this year. We have a couple of them that we'd like to thank, and that's the Pankey Foundation. Edgar and Libby Pankey were very generous to us, along with John and Jean Siegel and Rick Nelson's Red Hill Winery. So it allows us a little bit of flexibility to get some good speakers in and be able to do these types of things. I'm really super excited about this. So tomorrow, I don't know if you saw your brochure, but we are all invited to the Orange County Sheriff's Museum, which is not open to the public. And I said to Ray, I said, boy, you're pretty not known for the public. And he goes, there's a reason we're stealthy. So I'll let him explain all of that. I'm going to hand out at the end of the night these. They're not actually tickets. You don't need a ticket to get in the door, but it's got your directions on there and where to park. So I want to make sure everybody gets this. And again, you don't have to have one per person. We invite you to come into the museum. So that's tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. So again, the fact that it's not open to the public, I actually canceled a baseball game to do that because I'm pretty excited about that. Tonight, we're honored. We've got Ray Grimes as our speaker tonight, all the way from Arizona. So I don't know if you heard him just say he comes out once a month to get his business done. He's the Orange County Sheriff's Department Assistant Director and Acting Director of the Communication Division. You were. You were part of the Orange County Sheriff's Department Aero Squadron Reserve Unit Captain for 28 years.
I retired in September.
And I said, oh, helicopters? He said, no, fixed wings, which I didn't know they had fixed wings, so
Just
I'm going
like
to let you do that.
Just like the museum, we have a stealth Air Force nobody knows about.
Best kept secrets. And more important, he's right now, at least for me, he's the co-founder of the Sheriff's Museum, and we were talking tonight about the need for brick and mortar buildings and the need certainly always for fundraising. So when you come up tonight, you can see they've got some items for sale, and some of them look cool, and we'll definitely be picking them up from Tim Jensen, and I'm sorry, I apologize.
Rania.
Hi, Rania, welcome. So they're going to be selling their wares tonight, and we encourage you to do that. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Ray. You're in good hands, and thank you again for being here. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you, everybody. And I'm very envious of this beautiful building. We've tried for 20 years to get a museum building, and we're still trying. So that's a long story. But anyway, let's proceed. So greetings from the County of Orange. And there's 8 of us, 8 Orange counties. And the reason I know that was a number of years ago, I was involved with an extradition out of Texas, and the paperwork didn't add up. And we determined that it was for the other Orange County, the one in Florida. So I was a guest speaker at a public safety conference in Orlando, and my opening comment was, I've just flown 5 hours and I'm still in Orange County. And I have all those slides. I've been to every one of those departments to grab their slides, their patches. So let's talk about Orange County's history. County was formed in 1889, and we'll talk a little more about that. So prior to 1889, the territory that we're in goes back to the Spanish more than 200 years. It wasn't until 1769 that first efforts were made to colonize the area. Catholic missionaries and Spanish soldiers were sent north to establish a chain of missions and forts. Don Gaspar de Portola led the first overland expedition through Orange County back in 1769. And 2 years later, Father Junipero Serra founded Mission San Gabriel in what's now Los Angeles County. Mission San Juan Capistrano was founded November 1, 1776. And these 2 missions laid claim to much of what is now Orange County, which had cattle grazing, horses, and sheep until the 1830s. As early as 1870, local residents had tried to break away from Los Angeles County, but it wasn't until 1889 that the California legislature passed a bill to allow this. Under Spanish rule, all land grants were considered property of the king. but a few retired soldiers were granted grazing permits. One of the first was Manuel Nieto, who in 1784 was allowed to occupy all the land between Santa Ana and San Gabriel rivers. Part of his lands would later be granted to his heirs as 5 separate ranchos. Around 1800, Juan Pablo Grijalva began running cattle south and east of Santa Ana River. In 1810, his son-in-law, Jose Antonio Yorba, and his grandson, Juan Pablo Peralta, received a formal concession to the land that became known as Rancho Santiago de Santa Ana. So I had an employee that worked for me at one time, and his middle initial was Y, and I go, that's curious, what is that? And he says, Yorba, and great-granddad was Yorba. So that's pretty awesome. So Mexico broke away from Spain in 1821, taking California with them. In 1834, the Mexican government began to secularize the California missions, restricting the padres to the religious duties, placing civil administrators in charge of the operation of the missions. The Mexican government also authorized land grants of up to 44,000 acres to Mexican citizens who would occupy and improve the land. By 1846, almost all of Orange County was part of one rancho or another. Cattle ranching was the backbone of the local economy. Trading vessels from the United States and other countries sailed up and down the coast, collecting cattle hides and tallow in return for manufactured goods. So at the end of the Mexican War in 1848, California was ceded to the United States by Mexico. And by the way, they're still arguing about whether Catalina came in the package. That's another story. The gold rush of 1849 brought tens of thousands of new settlers to California. This gave the rancheros a new market for their cattle, which were sold as beef to feed hardworking miners. The local economy soared, but a series of droughts, floods, and diseases, along with the cost of defending the ownership of the land in the American courts, eventually drove out many of the rancheros to ruin. Some of the old ranchos were sold to American owners with names like Stearns, Bixby, and Irvine. With cotton production disrupted by the Civil War, sheep ranching began replacing cattle, and other ranches are broken up and sold off in pieces to settlers and developers. So Anaheim was the very first town founded and chartered in Orange County in 1857, and a group of German immigrants lived in San Francisco, brought a portion of the Rancho San Juan Cajon de Santa Ana to start a new community built on winemaking. The area was subdivided, an irrigation ditch dug, and the vineyards planted before the first colonists moved in 1859. In 1868, vast areas on either side of the Santa Ana River were placed in the market, and the towns of Santa Ana, Tustin, Orange, Westminster, and Garden Grove were soon founded. Farming became the backbone of the local economy. Wine and raisin, grapes, barley, corn were all successful. In the 1870s, a new irrigation system was built, allowing more tree crops to be planted, including walnuts, apricots, and oranges. So Anaheim, the name Anaheim is German, and it means along the river. So that might be good information at a party someday, but I just thought I'd share that. In 1870, the first commercial vessel entered Newport Bay, which soon became a regular shipping port along the coast. The Southern Pacific built the first railroad in 1875, extending its tracks south from Los Angeles to Anaheim. The line was extended to Santa Ana 2 years later. So that isn't an eye chart. Basically, the Southern Pacific had a monopoly until 1885, and Santa Fe moved in a burst of economic growth, and here we are today. Southern Pacific held a monopoly when Santa Fe pushed its tracks over the Cajon Pass. Competition brought a burst of advertising and a sharp drop in ticket prices, setting off a great real estate boom through the region. Existing communities expanded, and new towns and subdivisions sprang up. by the dozens by the tourists and settlers pouring into Southern California. Less than 2 years later, the boom collapsed, and in many of the new towns, places like Carlton, San Juan by the Sea, St. James, and other paper towns faded away. Others like Fullerton, Buena Park, and El Toro survived. The burst of economic growth and local pride in the 1880s led to the formation of the County of Orange in 1889. And as early as 1870, local residents tried to break away from Los Angeles and form their own county, but it wasn't until 1889 that they got the support of the state legislature. Orange, originally, the proposed county line was drawn at the San Gabriel River, but the line was moved south to Coyote Creek to help gain support in Sacramento. This angered Anaheim and some other northern communities that had hoped to be near the center of the county. They voted against the measure, but the rest of the area overwhelmingly voted for the division. Santa Ana was selected as the county seat on August 1, 1889. So this is Los Angeles County prior to 1889. It was huge. It ran all the way up to Kern County, west to County of Ventura, east to Riverside and San Bernardino, and south to San Diego County. And it was pretty well unmanageable, at least for us. So some of the reasons we wanted to separate is it was very unequal government representation. We paid taxes, got nothing back. There was no growth plan recognized by LA County. It was geographically distant from downtown LA, which was government center. So if you needed to go to a federal office or a county office, you got in your horse and buggy and drove for a couple days to get there. Law enforcement, if you needed a deputy and called 911, just checking to see if you're awake. If you called on a phone or telegraph for a deputy, if you think about it, the roads were farm roads, they were muddy, they were impassable, they were out. 2 days later, the deputy would show up on his horse, and that didn't really work for us. A road trip to downtown LA to file legal documents was painful. And as I say, our tax dollars went into the general fund. There are very different politics and priorities from Orange County, and still are. Roads between LA and Orange County were poorly maintained wagon trails that ran through ranches that were sometimes impassable. So one of the things going on with Orange County in those days is they had lots of floods and very little control of watershed, and these were giant swamps. So that's how people navigated through wagon trails through swamps. So we've had a number, I think about 15 sheriffs over the years. Richard T. Harris was the first sheriff in 1889 to 91, and he was a local businessman with no law enforcement experience. So his claim to fame was when he took the office was they handed him a revolver and he promptly shot himself in the foot. So the current sheriff is Don Barnes, who I'm sure you all know about, and he's a good man, and he's making some important contributions in Orange County, so that's our sheriff now. And Theo Lacey, by the way, was sheriff in 1891 and 1899, and one of the things you'll see tomorrow in the museum is we have his walking stick that was presented to him in 1892 when he was running for office, and we were able to grab that, and it's a rare item. We'll show it to you tomorrow. So until the 1950s, agriculture remained the most important part of Orange County economy. As other crops disappeared, citrus became more and more popular. The grape industry never recovered from a devastating blight in 1886-87. Apricots all but disappeared by the 1920s. Growers began planting celery, sugar beets, and lima beans in the 1890s. Cattle still grazed on the vast ranches in the southern end of the county, while dairy farms grew up in the north, but it was citrus that came to dominate the area. By 1930, Orange County was producing a sixth of the nation's Valencia orange crop. So just a note about about sugar beets. I lived in Rossmore, Los Alamitos, And the Rossmore signature wall, the red bricks, came from the sugar beet plant that was knocked down in Los Alamitos. So those are historic bricks. During World War II, a number of important military bases were established in Orange County, including the El Toro Corps Air Station, Marine Corps Air Station, Seal Beach Naval Weapons Station, originally known as Naval Ammunition and Net Depot, Seal Beach. In the Los Alamitos, now it's the Joint Forces Training Base, originally known as the Los Alamitos Naval Air Station, and then there was the San Ana Army Base. The San Ana Army Base, by the way, we know as the Orange County Fairgrounds. So that was actually an air base, though it had no runway, but it was a supply depot. And some of the county buildings that we had, like in communications, were those wooden buildings that came from the base. So if you go to the fairgrounds, on the near where the big stadium is, there's a wooden historic building. It's their museum. That was one of the original barracks types buildings that we county grabbed a lot of those, and that was one of the remaining ones. It's worth seeing. By the mid-1950s, Orange County farms are being replaced by tract housing. Existing cities began annexing territory in every direction, and new cities incorporated almost every year. Between 1953 and 62, Buena Park, Costa Mesa, La Palma, Garden Grove, Cypress, Westminster, Fountain Valley, Los Alamitos, San Juan Capistrano, and Villa Park all voted to incorporate. In 1963, the county reached the landmark population topping 1 million. So in 1947, Knott's Berry Farm opened, selling wonderful boysenberry pies, preserves, and chicken dinner. KBF has recently become a major amusement park, though the legacy attractions in the chicken dinner restaurant remain. So the Orange County Sheriff's Department has a long history with KBF, that in the 40s, their police chief was Steve Knott, who was the son of Walter Knott, and he was a sworn officer, drove a pickup truck with a shotgun, a borrowed radio, and he was the law over there. Tourism, manufacturing, and the service industry began to dominate the local economy. Disneyland opened on July 1, 1955, and became an international tourist destination. In the late 1950s, aerospace firms and light industry began expanding, and the increasing population meant more and more jobs at hospitals, restaurants, and stores. South Orange County began to grow in the 1960s with master planned communities such as Irvine, Mission Viejo, Laguna Niguel, Liso Viejo, Santa Margarita, Ladera Ranch, and others followed in the 80s and 90s. Today, Orange County tops more than 3 million residents with 34 incorporated cities. So this is a picture we had in our communications county archives back when Sheriff's Communications was General Services, and that was a World War II surplus ambulance that became the communications van, and we were staged at the opening of Disneyland. So in 2004 or 24, we celebrated our 20th anniversary chartered, and can't believe we made it that far because there are numerous law enforcement museums closing their doors these days. I know of about 5 of them in the country, and for a lot of different reasons. Part of the reason we are still existing is we don't own a building. We have very few expenses. So part of the reason some of these museums are closing was in the city of Ontario that had an absolutely beautiful museum, hand-built by retired officers. Police chief came in and said, I want this space, and it's going to be a training room or a restaurant or something, and closed it down, which absolutely broke these people. So they put everything in storage, and that was the end of their very nice museum, which served the community. So a few years later, not long ago, I got a call from the Ontario Police Museum former staff, and they said, we're paying for public storage for everything. Do you want it? So I go, sure. So we went over and got everything. And one of the things they had, I was kind of looking at, was a KC-1000 police motorcycle, completely outfitted, radio, E-plates, lights. And I said, how much do you want to sell it for? And they didn't answer me. So I said 3 times, how much you want to sell it for? And they said, you take it. We're so mad at the city. It belongs to us, not the city. It's here. So that bike is on display in our new tech center. So, but anyway, 20 years into this and going strong. 2004, the Orange County Sheriff's Museum and Education Center was formed under State of California Title 26, Section 501c3 as a private nonprofit organization. We are not the county, and we are not the Sheriff's Department. The founders were Captain Brian Wilkerson, who was the captain at the Theo Lacey Jail, Lieutenant Jeff Bardzik, who was the Reserve Forces commander, and me as assistant director. And so we got together and said, you know, we're one of the few counties that doesn't have a sheriff's museum, and that's what got us going. So we have a lot of executive members. The original founding executive staff were PSR Ken Bourne, Connie Rimmer, who was our pro bono attorney, and PSR Bill Griffin, who is a banker finance person. We receive no money from the department or county, and we operate through private donations, selling a few trinkets, and anything else we can do to scratch it up in a few donations. And we operate completely with a volunteer force. So when we got started, we had a legal problem. We couldn't use any county resources because they weren't sanctioned by the county. So we were meeting and lunch in a restaurant off county property and to make this as legal as we could. So we went to the Board of Supervisors, and they recognized us as a favored nonprofit. So that allowed us to meet in county buildings. We can do things on the county time as employees, and that's worked pretty well for us. So we finally got there. Mission statement: it was established to preserve, store, and display Orange County Department historical facts and documents. The museum shall be established to highlight the various units of the Sheriff's Department and to display an overview of its history, mission, and value to the community. The museum shall also serve as an educational center for the community and Sheriff's Department, providing an attractive and relevant lecture and training venue. The museum can offer narrated tours and lectures to the community, schools, and youth programs, promoting goodwill while educating young people as to the important and diverse tasks of the Sheriff's Department, with emphasis on alcohol and drug prevention and career opportunities within the department. Our objectives are collect and preserve OCSD historical materials and artifacts, design the future Orange County Sheriff's Museum, select candidate sites for the museum, develop and follow through with fundraising programs for the museum, and publicize and advertise the Sheriff's Museum. So one of the reasons that we're stealthy is that we're in 2 locations: the lobby of the Sheriff's Academy in Tustin, and that belongs to the college district. It's not our building, but it is a law enforcement building. And then we're at the Deputy Union Hall you'll see tomorrow, and that is a private law enforcement organization. So we can't open the doors to people wandering in, nor would I put that burden on the Deputy Union having people pop in for a tour. So some of the reasons I'm so cautious about that was the San Diego Sheriff's Museum that used to be in Old Town San Diego. It was an icon. They were in an adobe building that they paid $700,000 for. I'll give them that any day. And people would come in and see a museum and go in there. They started having problems with gangs. And the gangbangers, for an initiation under camera, would go in and steal a uniform off a mannequin. And they were threatening the people working in there, and they said it's not safe. Also, with the attitude toward law enforcement, people quit coming in there. So that's what shut that down. Some of these museums, I was up at one in Toronto, and they had a beautiful museum, and the new chief came in, defunded it, moved all the people that were working in that were direct reports to the chief, and put them back in the field. So that makes no sense, but that's kind of what's happening. But we don't have any of that. We don't own a building. So Don Barnes is our honorary chairperson. Darren Braham replaced me as executive director, and I am now a vice president on the board and a director. Ken Bourne is our webmaster, and do a search by Orange County Sheriff's Museum. We're very proud of what we have on there. We have 9 gigabytes of digitized historic photos, and many of them are on display with stories about infamous and famous people. So go take a look at that. And then we have Bill Griffin funding. Chuck Streitz is financial and contracts. And then we have a whole host of people. Sergeant Maria Bowen is our sheriff's liaison. We need to have somebody connected to the department that can get us things, and it's her. We have an IT specialist, vehicle specialist, graphic artist, and these are all volunteer people part-time. So considering how few people we have, I think we've done a pretty amazing job in these many years with what we have. So some of the community programs we wish to support are in elementary schools, free from drugs and positively no drugs. Middle school, positively no drugs. Drug use is life abuse, next step. And in high school, Project No Gangs and drug use is life abuse. So we haven't done a lot. Part of our name is Education Center, and we didn't have the staff to do that and support it. But we did our first tour Thursday, and in the morning we had, I think there were 12 kids of around age 5. So should have brought the handcuffs, but that was tiring. But they had a good time. The parents loved it, and that was the first time we've done anything like that. We hope to do a lot more. So back when we were young and innocent, we had an architect that was going to fund that building for us and build it at the Tustin location. And that's what it was going to look like. We're going to have a helicopter hanging in there, and very cool. And what happened was a certain sheriff soiled the badge, and these people dropped us like a hot rock. So that was not a good time for us either. So we've tried 4 times to get a museum building, and the lesson we've learned is it isn't going to happen on county property. There just isn't anything. So this is the Tustin Academy, and you can go in there. It's owned by Rancho Santiago College. So you can go in there, take a look around the lobby. If you go in one of the front offices, you can probably get a tour. So they're doing deputy training, academy classes, and we installed everything in the lobby about 18 years ago. So when this building was built, they had a video matrix with 8 TV monitors, and they were CRT, old technology, and it was supposed to be sort of a mosaic of nice scenes and stuff. Never worked. So then they took it out, and it became a hole in the floor with an AC outlet. And then they came to us and said, would you like to put some things in there? So the first cabinets and stuff we put in, all cabinets must be black with silver, and we have writer review of everything you put in. So I go, this is going to be painful. So after we put our first cabinets in, they said, we love it, put in whatever you want, and left us alone. So I love having that in there because the recruits, the families, all visitors to that building walk through our museum. And now as part of the recruit training, day 1 is to go in there and look at our history. So one of the things I learned from one of the academy instructors was they go in there and they tell them a few facts. So they tell them the county was formed in 1889 as was the sheriff's department. And when they get them back in the classroom, they ask somebody, what year were we formed? So I've told a couple of these recruits, write it on your hand. So that academy was a $337 million operation, 53,000 square feet. It's on the old Tustin Air Base property. And 15 acres of land was donated by the city of Tustin, which was the old air base. The county and OCSD share in funding this complex. The Sheriff's Museum is constructed in the lobby and was installed in 2006. So we have a highly visible example of our history, and visitors seem to appreciate it. So this is what some of the things that are in the lobby. We have 3 motorcycles that are restored, and one of the early bikes is in there. And that pyramid is a badge collection, and I was very nervous about putting classic badges. We got those loaned from the Armory. So I had a friend in the bulletproofing business that makes package passers and plastic plexiglass windows and things for banks and such, and he made that pyramid for us. So that is bulletproof Lexan with a highly secure lock on it. So we've got some great badges, and that talks about a different time in Orange County, that in the 60s, you'll see pictures tomorrow of our dispatchers who weren't sworn in tan uniforms with badges, but they weren't sworn. So everybody had a badge, and some of the badges in this display is we have Cook 2, Warehouseman 3, Supervisor, everybody had a badge. And when Sheriff Gates came in, he goes, no, that wasn't going well with people getting stopped. So on there you see a round black thing. When they raised the Sycamore Jail in the basement, they found 3 ball and chains. So we have those in our various museums. And if you noticed, I wrapped the chain around the ball, because if we ever have an earthquake, that thing's going to leave through the glass. So, but that was our portable jail. So, and then when they went to court, they'd put one of those on the bad guy, slow him down anyway. So some of the projects we have is we have the 1962 Chrysler Newport. The department had about 150 of those, and then at 100,000 miles, unless they wrecked them first, there were none. So we bought that civilian car, and we outfitted it with our own funds. The light deck on the top and the siren and the radio are all original. So that is our PR icon. The department doesn't remember, they don't own it, but we do a lot of PR events with it, car shows and parks and kid events, and everybody wants that car. So we have 3 SWAT vans, and those are hidden away inside Theo Lacey Jail. And one of them was a mobile museum, but we didn't have the resources to really deploy it. And then we have our motorcycles. I hate driving that car on the freeway. Half the people don't know it's an old cop car, and the other half are in front of me photographing me. It's dangerous. I've had people on motorcycles in front of me going like this with a video camera, and not good. So, KZ-1000 police motorcycle, just recently, I think they just quit making them. It's probably made for over 20 years. It's a real great bike. So now the cops are riding Beamers. So if you ever see a sheriff deputy smiling on his bike, that's because one ear has a Bose earpiece with music. The radio shop puts those together for him. So one of the things we wanted is, Sheriff has a new tech center, which is off of Red Hill, west of the Academy, and they put in we're still putting in a museum in there. So they wanted a car on display, but there's some problems with that, because we're not going to put our own one working car in there. If we need it, we need to get it out. So at first we were looking for, maybe we'll just put a Hulk in that looks like a sheriff's car. And then I've done a lot of research online looking for a car, and I just found a gem, that 1960 Pontiac Catalina 4-door sedan, which is super rare. We bought that out of Brookings, South Dakota, and it was just delivered to my Arizona house Monday on a transport. So we're bringing that back here in 2 weeks. We've got the original lights, the original radio. It's going to look like the picture with the kid in the wagon is a very famous picture. It's in every substation. And we're going to replicate that in the tech center with a real car. So tomorrow you'll see AOCDS, Association of Orange County Deputy Sheriffs, and they are the bargaining organization and union for the deputies, and they've been really good to work with. Some years ago, they came to us and said, we'd like to put some shadow boxes in with artifacts. We said, how about something else? How about a museum? So we have 5-year renewable leases, and we're in our second session, which is going to continue. And a lot of public safety people come into that building, so it serves a good purpose. So we have a good membership or relationship with the museum and AOCDS. Say we're into our second renewal year. We sell some collectible things in their store, not open to the public. Access, we have done private tours. I've had a couple retired police or a couple police from other countries contact me and want to come, and once I figure out they're the real thing, I've given private tours. So I met somebody that's turned out to be a really good friend who's a British Ministry of Defense police officer, and he came out and I gave him a private tour. So when I went to England, I got a private tour of their museum on a military base that isn't open to the public. So, nice to know people like that. So AOCDS has conference and training rooms, full commercial kitchen, and plenty of parking. So you'll see, I'm just going to buzz through these because you'll see these tomorrow. So AOCDS bought cabinets, matching lighted cabinets, spent $30,000 in cabinets for our artifacts. So we went to the armory, and the captain of that division was directed by the sheriff to give us badges. So they gave us all kinds of badges going back to the beginning, and there's some really rare ones. So third row down, second from the left, the gold badge, the shield. That's a City of Fullerton deputy, and I've never been able to find anybody that can tell me what a deputy was in Fullerton. Nobody in their department, but they had one. So one of the things is I belong to the International Conference of Law Enforcement Museums, and I've learned a lot from those people. And this year we're going to meet at the DEA Museum, Oklahoma, or somewhere around there. Anyway, but they use something called Past Perfect. That's a forensic program that you folks know about. But we didn't have the money or the staff to manage that. So we do the best we can. Everything that comes in and out of our museum has a paper trail. I never want to be accused of sidestepping anything. So we have a lot of duplicates. We just put things away. And we had a young man do his Eagle Scout project and inventory all of our museums in these binders. So they've got photographs, replaceable pages. It's all on a disc, descriptions. And we have that in case anybody ever asks where anything went. So at Saddleback Station, it's called Southeast Station, Rancho Santa Margarita. Several years ago, we were offered 10,000 cubic feet of storage. And we have 3 storage areas, 2 are climatized. We have a warehouse area that's non-climatized that's quite big. And we've been able to inventory and label most everything. We track everything in and out of there. And here's an oddity, 80% of what's in there is Orange County property, 20% were donated or museum owned. So the hook with that is the county, one of the reasons we chartered was the county's mindset was throw everything away. And there were big pieces of the history missing, like during World War II. So we managed to stop everything. I wrote a letter for 2 sheriffs that they distributed with an order saying, if you have anything of historical value, contact me. And we've gotten some things back and it's stopped the throwaway. So we weren't able to really manage a lot of this, but we paid for cages, and anything that was given to us is in lock and key. So we stopped the throwaway. So one of the oddities here was when they built the tech center, was the sheriff's department came to us and said, we'd like to have some of the artifacts in our museum. So I said, we got a legal problem. You were about to throw all this away. You don't know you owned it. So here's the deal. I'm not giving you anything that isn't on paper through a memo of understanding. So we wrote up an MOU. We went to the Board of Supervisors and they said, we get it. So amazingly, about a year ago, the supervisors created an MOU, oddly, that allows us to give the county property on loan that the county used to own that they don't know they owned. So we managed to do that. So one of the things we had donated was the Home Depot next to the station. Donated a lot of things for us. We got these beautiful storage cabinets, and then we had explorers put all this together. So we have uniforms inside. We have everything in lock and key. We have Sandra Hutchins and Brad Gates' office furniture sitting there, and someday we'd like to have a place to put it. So some of the things we do with our car is PR events, including graduations. We charge the substations to come out to the event because we have operating costs, and they have no problem with that. But for anything that involves the department, such as graduations, that's on us. So we do that free. So while cruising eBay, I found amazing things. There's things that shouldn't be sold. I've seen raid jackets, badges, things that shouldn't be on there. And I went to the department saying, you need to stop this, and they got sold anyway. But one of the things I found that we didn't know existed was this is the true story of Lynn Stewart on Columbia Pictures. And you can buy this DVD, and it's absolutely amazing. You're looking into history, that this was done at the Sycamore Jail. And you can see offices like the coroner's office, the courtrooms, things that don't exist. And what this amounted to, if you notice the car, back in the early days, we would buy off the LA Sheriff contract. So all our cars looked the same. And they were light gray or white cars, no black and white till 58. And they had the trio light deck on the top with the siren and lollipop lights. So we're looking at this and I'm seeing cars we've never seen pictures of. So what the story's about is in the 50s, Lynn Stewart had a nephew who went to one of the high schools, and he got called into the office because he had some marijuana, and that was a real big deal. So he had a few blades of marijuana, and they wanted to know, where'd you get this? And they figured out this was coming from a Mexican cartel. So she was really angry about this in the high school. So she contacted the sheriff's department, and she said, I'd like to be an undercover operative. And they go, what? We don't have those. So she was persistent. So she kept asking, and then the department said, you know what, we can use you. So she became a fake waitress at a drive-in restaurant where the hoods would hang out and make deals. And she went into Mexico and infiltrated them. And she made the case and busted them, and there were a bunch of Mexican mafia arrests because of her. So then they have to give her witness protection, move her out. Nobody knows where she is. But if you look at this video, this DVD, there's things in here we've never seen before in the sheriff's department, living and breathing. It's really amazing. So in our archives, we have 9 gigabytes of digitized photos. When the sheriff's photographer passed away, all of these large format, high resolution black and white photos were left in the penthouse of the central jail. So we went up there with a bunch of explorers and took everything down a real narrow staircase. And they had drawers full of photos. We digitized all of them. So you notice the one with the sheriff car and the helicopter? That was Marine One. And we think from the pictures we have, that's when Nixon was coming in as vice president and campaigning for president. So that was the Tustin Air Base. So the picture of the old Hudson Hornet, Sheriff Music is standing next to the Hudson Hornet, and he was the only one that had that car. So it had a low-band whip antenna, stars on the door, spotlight, and I finally figured out somebody told me who the guy is standing next to him with a hat and suit. That was the Hudson Hornet salesman in Orange County that was certain he was going to sell us a fleet of those. You saw how that worked out. So one of the pictures in the middle of here was the sheriff and a man with a striped tie taking a bomb apart on his desk. So I laugh at that picture. So I asked somebody, who's the guy standing with the tie? FBI. I said, how do you know that? They said, our deputies couldn't afford good suits like that. So we've had some famous people in the department. Chuck Connors was a member of the Sheriff's Advisory Committee. He was mainly a money guy and helped raise donations. And Andy Devine was Sheriff's Advisory Committee. And then, of course, we had Sheriff Music, and Sheriff Gates would ride in parades with their horses. They're real horse people. And then at the bottom, you see Richard Nixon, and that's why I'm pretty sure, looking at young Richard and the Monsignor and the young sheriff, that was about the time he was running for president. And so at the top is John Wayne, who is a personal friend of Sheriff Music, and John Wayne was presented with badge number 1, and no sheriff has ever had badge number 1. So we don't know where that badge is. It's somewhere in the Wayne estate, and I'm sure we'll never see it. So there's our URL for the website. You can see us online. There's pull downs or stories behind the stories. There's some great stuff in there. Anyway, do you have any questions on that part before we go on to the next thing? Okay, let me see if I can do this. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, let me. Here, let me stop, yeah.
Yeah, I was at the tour for the Santa Ana Museum, the old courthouse, and they sometimes get donations from families that have deceased members. Have you ever checked with them to see if they have any sheriff memorabilia? Because it's possible that it just kind of went under the radar.
Very likely. They've even called us for historical information that we had and they didn't. But it's a real gem. They've got a lot of things, and no, we haven't. We probably need to talk to them. Yeah. Very likely. Anyway, enjoy this.
We are the Orange County Sheriff's Department, and your trust is our legacy.
Hello, I'm Don Barnes, Sheriff of Orange County. As you've just seen, the men and women of the Orange County Sheriff's Department are proud of our legacy. which extends more than 130 years. I'd like to invite you to join Sheriff Gates and me by supporting a very worthwhile endeavor. The Orange County Sheriff's Museum and Education Center, now and in the future, will highlight the rich history of our department. Equally important, the Education Center will offer programs to our school-age children and will inform adults of the many aspects of historic and modern law enforcement. We will be a central location for special events and law enforcement training. This will include our Orange County law enforcement partners who help keep Orange County one of the safest places in the nation. In this short presentation, we will show you a glimpse of our vision to enhance Orange County by creating a venue to preserve our history while educating our community.
Orange County law enforcement began in 1889 with sheriff's deputies on horseback. Over the years, law enforcement in Orange County has evolved, and the Orange County Sheriff's Department has become a law enforcement leader and model. The Orange County Sheriff's Department Museum and Education Center was created to preserve, store, and display the rich history of the Orange County Sheriff's Department, its artifacts and documents, and to serve as a law enforcement training facility and a public education center. The Education Center will serve our community by providing an attractive facility for all ages, including field trips for young students. There will be programs dedicated to character counts and drug use as life abuse. Narrated tours and lectures to the community schools and youth programs will promote goodwill while educating Orange County youths as to the important and diverse tasks that law enforcement performs. This soon-to-be-built museum and education center will allow visitors to travel through time from 1889 to present. It will highlight Orange County's high-profile cases and vintage law enforcement memorabilia, depicting the evolution of equipment, training, and law enforcement principles. Remarkable displays of Orange County Sheriff's Department badges, weapons, vehicles, photos, and more will be included. The Education Center aspect of the museum will be vital. Every specialized field of law enforcement will be represented. This will include patrol, jails, coroner, SWAT, bomb squad, homicide, harbor patrol, CSI forensics, and more. There will be interactive displays educating visitors about every aspect of law enforcement. There will be law enforcement training for sworn officers throughout California. Currently, there is not enough law enforcement training venues in Orange County. This facility will house 2 state-of-the-art classrooms, one being a stadium-sitting lecture hall and a theater. Additionally, we will offer displays depicting an international law enforcement insight. This will also be a venue for both corporate and ceremonial events. California law enforcement will be able to rely on us for many of their training needs, and it will give the public a personal insight into Orange County law enforcement, including the local agencies that have been long-standing partners with the Sheriff's Department.
Hello, I'm Brad Gates. The Orange County Sheriff's Department has been in existence for 122 years. I was privileged to be the sheriff for 24 years. I believe history and education will always have a positive impact on the future. I'm very excited about the Orange County Sheriff's Museum and Education Center. Please join Sheriff
Barnes
and me in creating a state-of-the-art museum and education center in the heart of Orange County. Our rich history and the ability to share a hands-on learning environment with the citizens of Orange County is a wonderful cause that will have a positive impact on our community. There are so many that have given so much throughout our history. This museum and education center will preserve, highlight, and share those efforts, sacrifices, and accomplishments. Please join us in making this a reality. Thank you.
So let me tell you a few things about Brad Gates. During the unpleasant bankruptcy of 1994, Brad Gates became the CEO and pulled the county out of the mud. It's pretty amazing to have a sheriff being the CEO to run a county, but he did. And he also is known for a photographic memory that he used to dazzle them in court or in the board meeting. And he could recite the penal code. That's section 187 PC subpart A, where let me quote, and it would blow them away with the stuff like that. So some of my recollections is when I was a recruit, they had an open house and picnic at Catella, and sheriff didn't like to drive the county car. He drove a Lincoln Continental. So he pulled up in front of me, and my kids were little. I think they were probably about 12. And we got out, and I said, would you like to meet a real sheriff? And he got down on his knees and talked to them like people. So that was pretty special. So one of the stories about back in the 80s was Brad Gates, the deputies would do their reports on paper. So they'd sit up on a hill away from everybody in a cul-de-sac like down in Capistrano, and they'd turn on the interior light and write the report. So a deputy was doing that one summer night, and a Lincoln Continental pulls up next to him, rolls the window down, and the man in it says, hi, how are you doing? Fine. And he says, I just came from a civic meeting. The deputy says, that's nice. Then he looks over at him and he says, so what do you do? He says, I'm your sheriff. And the deputy said, oh no. So the next morning in briefing, this is a real tall deputy, he's sitting there hiding himself behind his hand, and the watch commander says, got something for you, which is a large envelope. And it was a black and white autographed picture of Brad Gates with a note on it that says, keep this with you at all time to know who you work for. So, so anyway, interesting man. So one of the things Brad Gates said to us is one of his shortcomings in his career was he never built the museum he thought we ought to have. So that's part of our charter. We're making that happen. Thank you very much.
I shared with Ray and Tim earlier, I think a lot of Tustin police officers wanted to grow up to be sheriff's department. So we all know Big John Stanton was Tustin's first police officer, first chief of police. He was the sole officer for 14 years, and I mean the only one, days, nights, and everything in between. The second hire was a man named Noah Saygraves, N.O. Saygraves. He had been a rancher beforehand, became John Stanton's number 2 man. And worked here in Tustin for about 5 years and grew up to be a sheriff deputy for 30 years. And then we had Arthur Hurd, who was one of our chiefs of police, who ended up, again, going over to the sheriff's department for another 30 years. And they actually closed the Superior Court when he passed away because of his service to the county. So it's just one of those things I think every little Tustin police officer wants to grow up to be a sheriff. Maybe like the green better. But again, thank you, Ray, very much. Thank you,
pleasure.
Tim. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Don't forget, pick up your pass for tomorrow. And again, it's not actually a pass. You don't need a physical one. But we're going to be at 1600 North Main Street in Santa Ana. It's a half a block from Main and 17th Street. The entrance is on Sycamore, and watch for a little white picket fence or white fence.
Steel picket fence that'll be open.
Okay, and that's off of Main Street. So at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Yep.
So we'll make sure that you, I'm sorry, Tony, I'll get you another one.
Probably going to be about an hour and a half tour.
Okay. And again, you know, we appreciate that because, as he indicated, that's not something that we can normally do. So it's going to be a very worthwhile event. And Ray and Tim, thank you so much. Please stop by and look at their belongings. And for the 2 new ones from our museum, make sure you look around before you leave. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.